Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us on Plots and Politics with the incredible, amazing Corinne Strait. I am Sarah Blessing, and we are talking about, do we still need feminism in 2025? And it's going to be, yes, we do. Have we had a female president yet? No, there's a lot of, so yeah, we need it. We're going to talk about from Roe, like the 1970s area up until today, and, really see how the same themes keep happening. We still got to keep pushing for basic rights. That's, I think, never going to change. Just the technology changes. So, Corinne, thank you for doing this. How are you doing, girl? Let's get started.
I'm doing good. I think, we are a couple of Indiana ladies. I think we would be remiss if we didn't mention the storms that happened last night. If anybody's listening to this and not watching, we're recording this on April 3rd. And in the last 4 days, we have had 2 rounds of devastating storms rip through the state of Indiana. At the last I checked, there was a confirmed tornado in Indianapolis and a confirmed tornado in Bremen, Indiana, which is a little further up north here by me. So Sarah, how are you doing? Did y'all get any damage down there?
Yes, we did get damage. We had to go down around midnight, take the kids down there for the tornado sirens in Palmyra went off. And then this morning I fed the cats and looked in the garage and saw water damage in the ceiling. And then Chris and I had to go out this morning for like an hour and fix the roof as best we could. It was sort of dangerous. I was like carrying heavy concrete blocks up a ladder, handing into them so he could put it on the roof tiles he had glued.
Okay, to hold them down probably until the glue sets. Yeah.
And then just looking around at the flooding in Palmyra. We're having really bad flooding, and we're going to get several more inches of rain this weekend. So I'm really worried about the town.
Yes.
Yeah. How about you? Are you guys doing okay?
We're doing okay. And so, yeah, for those of you who don't know, Sarah and I like to talk about how we kind of are hugging the state of Indiana, because I am a couple of minutes from Michigan. She is a couple minutes from Kentucky. So we kind of hit both ends of the state here. And at least looking at the map of damage, you and I kind of look like we got the luckiest. It was the middle third probably of the state that got hit the hardest. My sister today is actually, because of where her office is located, they're in the southern portion of Elkhart County, and she and her coworkers are actually out today helping people clean up because they got they were just outside of the tornado, but a huge portion of the people that work near them did get affected by the tornado or by those straight line winds. So she sent a couple of pictures and just, entire roofs and siding, down to studs. Now, thankfully, it looks from a lot of the photos, there's not structural damage. It's just you got to kind of put the wallpaper back on the outside of the house, but it's quite a bit. So luckily up here, I have a lot of tree limbs down. I always get nervous when big rain events like this happen because I am on the river, but I am on the high side of the river. So I am very lucky, but I can look across the river at my neighbors on the low side. And it's really scary over there because there are folks in these just gorgeous, very expensive homes who sometimes lose access to their homes because you can't get down the driveway. So everybody take care of yourselves and check on your neighbors. I have an elderly neighbor that lives next door to me. I kind of pop over every once in a while and just see how he's doing. And but we've not lost power. I'm knocking on all the wood. We've not lost power. But yeah, it's this kind of season is when we really see and it's you can't recover. It's like as soon as you clean up from one storm, the next one is coming through. So everybody be safe and take those warnings seriously. Like there are so many of us, and I had a very unique experience in my career last year when the city of Elkhart, where I worked, was hit with a tornado within city limits, and that was quite a test for my crisis communication skills, for one, of figuring out how to get out information when people don't have power and don't have internet, and so that was a really crazy experience. But when the community comes together, when people get together to clean up, really great things happen. And I'm hoping that everybody is kind of able to band together. And
yeah, me too.
We did see, I wanted to check the news again. I think we've been very lucky as far as injuries or casualties. I've not seen any. I could be wrong. That could change. This is about noon Eastern time on April 3rd. I want to put a timestamp on there. So if we get news later, but there's a tendency for us Midwestern folks or us Tornado Alley folks to kind of think of like, ooh, fun, a storm, and not take the warnings seriously. And so I will give my spiel really quick for anybody who's listening, the difference between a tornado watch and a tornado warning.
Yeah.
And tornado watch just means the conditions in the atmosphere are correct where a tornado could happen. A tornado warning means something has been spotted. And even if it's not confirmed as a tornado, because usually a tornado confirmation takes anywhere from 12 to 24 hours, it's evaluating radar, it's from the National Weather Service, but it usually means that rotation has been spotted.
Yeah.
And so that is when you hear a warning, you get your butt to a basement, you get your butt to a bathtub, anywhere where you can be away from windows. And because a lot of people do get confused, even though
yes, it is confusing
here a long time.
Yeah.
The watch is just turn on your TV. I had my live stream up of our local NBC affiliate here in South Bend. I was watching, they have live around the clock coverage. And then you can kind of see it in real time. But when that warning happens, just don't take that.
Yeah, we had that.
That's
it was
when
around
we see
11:30 last night.
Mhm.
Oh, my phone woke me up loudly.
Mhm.
And then like 1 minute after that, the Palmyra sirens that were down for a while that are up now went off. And then Chris comes up and goes, "We got to get the kids. Let's go." And he had already put a sleeping bag down for our 6-year-old twins. And my 14-year-old just took his blanket and pillow and fell back asleep on the hard floor.
They don't care. When kids are that young, they're like, whatever.
Yeah. So it was a warning that meant a tornado circling or the funneling of the clouds had been spotted in Harrison County. So yeah. Okay.
And there is one, I will plug one more thing. If anybody is listening and cares, there is a really cheap weather radio that you can buy online. It is, you can use batteries. It can also be charged on solar or charged with a crank. And it's about this big, and you can crank it to get power. And so that is always really good to have a backup, because you never know when your phone's going to have bad signal. You never know when a cell tower is going to go down.
Yep.
You never know when you're going to lose power and you can't charge your devices. So those radios not only will send out the siren and the alert and give you updates, broadcast updates, you can also plug your phone into it and charge it.
That's nice.
So that's a really nice backup to have. When I close my eyes, I can hear the sound of our weather radio that we had as kids when we were growing up. So it's a really important just kind of device to have around. So that's my Midwest weather plug, y'all. Hey, get that radio.
At Project Next, we care about making your lives better, and sometimes that means get yourself a safe radio when we have these tornadoes, because I don't think these weather episodes are going anywhere. I think we're going to continue to have them. Yeah,
we are going to continue to have them. And so let's dive into feminism.
Let's do it, girl.
So it is April 3rd, as I said, which means we are technically out of Women's History Month, which is March, but whatever. It's always Women's History Month, and it's always women's everything when you're living your life as a woman or living your life with women that you care about. And there is kind of maybe a theoretical question that has been asked over the last several years. And it's very similar to other civil rights movements that we've heard. Do we still need affirmative action? Why? Why do we still need that? Why do we still need, Black student scholarships? Why do we still need? And the answers to all of those is yes, we do still need it, because when the protections aren't there, we lose rights. The same thing can be said for feminism and the advancement of women's rights. And all of this, when you kind of connect these episodes back to what we talked about in February with Reconstruction and Black Americans gaining rights, losing rights, gaining them again, losing them again, all of these efforts tend to go underground. And when things are not explicit, when it does not explicitly say we don't hire women, when it does not explicitly say we don't hire Black people, that doesn't mean discrimination does not exist anymore.
Right.
And that's when we have to look at the structure. And this gets really tricky, because a lot of this is nerd academic research based, right? When we look at systemic issues, and those are very difficult concepts to convey, because most of us are Black and white people. we want to see that there's a good or there's a bad. There's a yes, there's a no. There's a discrimination and non-discrimination. That's really not how it works. Everything is kind of on a spectrum. And that's what we see in a system that is created by men. And the really good example that we have of this week that is current in the news is our Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth making some very sweeping statements about women in combat. And that is such a touchy topic. And it's fascinating to me that it still remains a touchy topic, because when you talk to most active duty military members, this is not an issue for them. It's just not an issue for them. They are much more concerned about retaining veterans benefits when they come home. They are much more concerned about their income. They are much more concerned about their health care and their long-term well-being. There is a very small number of women who actually serve in combat roles. And because the metrics and the testing requirements are where they are, it's just a fact that most women are not going to qualify. But we have to remember at the same time that there are also a lot of men who do not meet those testing requirements. And so when you look at just in a structure of something like the military that is a very male-dominated structure, if men are the only people that have been making the rules, if they are the only people that have been setting these testing requirements, then it's going to benefit them. And I use this example sometimes, and people think that it's really silly, but it kind of illustrates biological differences. So if I would say a testing requirement is for you to maybe like shimmy your shoulders and shake your breasts, right? Like that's a testing requirement. That sounds silly, but it illustrates a biological difference that is existing between women who tend to have breasts and men who do not. And so when a man says, I need you to do 300 pull-ups, when you look at the structure of how a female body is made, we do not have the same kind of upper body strength because we have mammaries. Now, you want to compare leg day, you want to compare what we can squat, many women can keep up with that and can beat men in those areas. So it's really silly when you say, well, you've made the rules.
Yeah.
And you're making the rules based on what your body looks like.
Because you have stronger arm muscles. And you could be doing who can run longer distances, because women can run longer distances. Usually we have the makeup for that. And that seems pretty strong and important to me, honestly.
Endurance.
Yeah. Or fitting through a small hole, which I bet you have to do sometimes in these combat situations.
Flexibility. Look, when you look at flexibility.
Mind things. I think we're all very smart. So, maybe setting the requirements, that wouldn't be such a gender gap there.
Yeah. And there have been so many really cool stories, and this is where men are really stepping up in support of their colleagues, of their women in combat, of talking. And it makes me kind of emotional, because one of these stories that I heard was so heartbreaking, but it was going into a village overseas. And there were I think in this group, there were 2 women and it was 13 men, and the American soldiers. And this has probably been, this is before 2010. This guy has been retired for a while, but he was talking about how long they spent. They spent days and days and days and days trying to make contact with people in this village, trying to tell them, we are here to help you. Tell us what you need. Because of the way their society is set up, as well as also being patriarchal, there were women who did not have any men present, who were not able to have conversations with other men. And so there was this huge cultural divide. They were bridging the language barrier because they had a lot of people who were bilingual. So they were bridging the language barrier, but they were not bridging the cultural barrier. And once they figured out, we got to send the women in there, they got these kids water who didn't have water for 2 days, who were on the brink of dying from dehydration. I don't know why it makes me want to cry.
But I'm reading that book about special forces right now that Brian Zimmerman gave me. And I'm running into the same problem. So they're all men. They're all teams of men. They're amazing men. They know how to do so much. They're incredible. But they go into situations and they cannot talk to the women because they're not women. They have to talk to the men. If they just had one woman there she could talk to the women. Think how much the women know about what's
Mm-hmm.
going on with terrorist groups, what's going on in their village, how they could help make children and the women safer
Yep.
if they just had a woman talking to them. Um,
There are
we
so
we
many
don't know the damage done because there weren't women
Yep.
in the special forces being able to do that. And Brian's like, we should have women. They have a lot of
100%.
skills that we don't have. We should have them, but he's not in control of that. So
And
yeah,
that's when we talk about the differences. And we've talked about this when we talked about Reconstruction as well, and differences in race. This is where equity has to be the focus and not equality, because we're not talking about, I need you to have the same skills. I need you to have complementary skills. I need to be able, as
let's
a
work
leader,
together instead
yes,
of being scared of our differences.
as a leader, I need to be able to rely upon the emotional intelligence of a woman in her 20s who is going to just be better at that than a man in their 20s. And then I'm going to need him to go do the heavy lifting, or I'm going to. So when you talk about complementary skill sets, it becomes much more about equity, and it becomes a lot more about the leadership. Because when I hear, oh, I can't have women, it's I can't have women around, I can't, it's bad for morale,
Oh man.
troop cohesion, combat unit cohesion, that tells me that you're not a good leader, because that tells me that you're not able to find differences within your crew and put them to their best use. So that's never an issue with
It's
like the staffer.
everywhere. It happens everywhere across every board. People are scared of change. People are
Mm-hmm.
scared of things that are different. And having a woman be a leader might be a change in your little area, your thing
Yep.
that you're in charge of. And so we need to call it out and talk about it. But it is so complex. It's
Mm-hmm.
not, they don't come right out and say, this is sexism I'm having right now, and here's why I have it. They
Yep.
say, she's too young,
Yep.
or she's too much drama. I get that
Mm-hmm.
one a lot. And
Drama.
it's like, she's not the drama. She's trying to make positive change. You guys being against her positive change, you all are the problem. But
Mm-hmm.
it's constantly worded that way.
Yeah.
Um, it's frustrating to me because I'm trying to be a strong leader in my community, and I get it a lot.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of time it's also from women.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like it's men attacking, it's our culture attacking women.
Yep.
I'm not blaming anybody that's saying it. We're saying it because culturally that's what we've been led to believe. And you have to kind of get out of it, get out of
Mm-hmm.
this fog that we're in, and then actively try to stop doing it. And it's hard.
It is hard. And
It's
that's where
hard.
we have to look at kind of the system and not really the individual.
Right. We're not trying
Um,
to blame people. Let's look at the
no,
culture.
let's look at the
Let's look at the
system,
system. Let's look at the government and why we're
the
continuing
structure.
to allow sexism to hurt all of us.
Yep. And so when we've looked at feminism, and when scholars look at feminism, we're kind of breaking it down into waves. So we have the first wave, which secured suffrage for white women, the right to vote for white women. That went up through World War II-ish. We've had the second wave, which is the 60s to the 80s. So this is the kind of the Roe era. The third wave of feminism really started to explore the issues of intersectionality, because the huge criticism of early feminism, not only in the US, but it was largely focused on white wealthy women, because you think about the kind of women who were able to dedicate their lives to fighting for something like suffrage. They had to have time. They had to have a way to support themselves. They had to have a little bit of money in the bank. So a lot of those women did come from a wealthier background or had a wealthy spouse that was supporting them. And so that left out a lot of people, that left out a lot of women of color, left out a lot of immigrant women. And so that third wave kind of takes us up until the early 2000s. And when you look at fourth wave feminism, which is where a lot of scholars say that we are right now, beginning in the early 2010s through today, it's shaped largely by the digital age and how much we are able to communicate over the internet and share some of these ideas. And intersectionality is really focusing on bringing in different voices. So I want to elevate the women of color. I want to elevate members of the LGBTQ community. We've seen the attacks that have been happening on transgender Americans, especially trans women. That is an issue of feminism as well. And as we start to reshape feminism, and you and I talked very early on in this series of what were our early understandings of feminism, and you and I kind of both had it was a dirty word. It was a bad thing. It was something that that meant like women wanted to be tyrants or something.
Yeah, and you're like, you don't want to say that word that you are that way, because then
Mm-mm.
men won't want to date you.
Yes. They'll think you're scary, right?
They'll think you're scary. Yeah. So you
Yep.
better shy away. Yeah.
And so, but when we talk about feminism today, a lot of the progress that is being made in bridging some of these gaps is talking about how a patriarchal structure is hurting men as well.
Yes.
And men are experiencing incredibly high rates of addiction, incredibly high rates of suicide, depression, and mental health disorders, especially in our 20 to 40 age range of men. That is something that has increased and does need to be taken seriously. And
And I would
so,
add to that loneliness. We have a lot of
mhm,
men very lonely, and they've taken a path down social media where they're being told they need to be in charge, they need to be the one running the show and in charge of the money, and then when they go out and try to date, they meet women that are very much against those things and want to be considered equal, and so they stay lonely and they get their feelings hurt by the women that don't want to date them, and so it takes them down an even darker path of, well, it's not about me, it must be them, I don't
they're
like
the
women very
problem.
much, and then it
Yeah.
grows and then it hurts everyone.
Yes.
Sexism hurts everyone. I really honestly feel like it is hurting men so much. I am very
Mhm.
worried about the men. I see them in my neighborhoods. I know that they are lonely and that they also are very far to the right on the views of the man should be in charge. And I'm like, well,
Mhm.
that right there is a big problem.
Yep.
And I don't know how to say it to them in a loving way that would help them think about it, because you can't just like say it to them passing them on the street, you
Mhm.
know? So it's something I'm really worried about. I see it in rural areas in Indiana a
Yeah.
lot. Yeah.
And this male loneliness epidemic, there is definitely feminism that can address it. And yet that is the group of people who are going to be most resistant to the idea of feminism, because they've also been taught that it's a dirty word, and they've been taught that we're the problem.
Hmm.
And there is some really interesting research from the Pew Research Center, which they study all sorts of issues, and they study a lot the gap of expectations, because what we're seeing with in a heterosexual relationship where two people are working, what do they feel their responsibilities are? The vast majority of women feel that their responsibilities are to financially support their household and run their household on a domestic front, while still the vast majority of men say their responsibility is to financially provide. So the disconnect, the last time that they really dove into this, it's been probably close to 15 years. That gap has actually grown in 15 years. There are fewer men who take on both responsibilities.
Did you
And
see the meme, the New York Times cartoon that I
yes,
shared with the episode?
I love that.
It's on Facebook, you all. So I shared it. I had seen it years before, and I looked it up and used it for this episode. It's a man proposing to a woman, and she holds two bags of groceries, and she's saying like, "Will you marry me and take on much more responsibility while my life stays virtually the same?"
Uh-huh.
And that really spoke to me, because it's not that the man is doing something evil. It's not, it's he does love her and want to marry her. It's just our culture. Well, if she does this and starts a family, her life is going to be much much busier culturally
Mhm.
unless you really work on equality.
Yep.
In my marriage, my husband does way his share of the chores, so we do
Mhm.
not have that problem. We do not have, I feel very fortunate. He's the main cook. He has his own cooking show on Project Next now. um so he does a lot. So I'm not saying I feel that way, but culturally, that's sort of the way
Mhm.
women are. We're just expected to be busy every second of the day and don't put ourselves first ever,
Ever. And
ever.
so you've seen what I find really interesting about looking at data like this is, so you've seen women adapt very quickly to the economic reality Women are
That we need
understanding.
we
I
both
need
need to work.
Yep. And so we've seen that change happen, largely really, that we're middle class white women generally who used to be the people that had the luxury of staying home. They have made that adaptation very quickly to this new economic reality of I have to financially support my family too. And that wasn't true 30 years ago. The majority of women did not feel their responsibility was financial support. And I was trying to find my stats, over 68% of women feel that way now. That's their job, is financial
Wow.
support. Financial support and domestic responsibility. Only 33% of men feel domestic responsibility as part of their job.
Wow.
And so that gap is huge. So you have seen a lot of men who are basing what their vision of life is on what their dads or their granddads' life looked like. And they have not adapted as quickly. And the fact that that can be that can be turned against women, that's women's fault for us being independent and us having a career and yada, yada, that's our fault. That is a tool of a patriarchal system. The only way that can be turned against us when we are the people who have adapted, when we are the people who are getting more college degrees than men, we are the people that are starting to out earn them at an early age. That really goes away as we get older, but women are adapting to an economic reality, and we are being blamed for the societal and familial changes that are happening. And so that's really fascinating that we can be the ones that change. We can be the ones that step up, and it's still our fault.
I see a pattern here of minorities in any way, a woman, any differences to the cultural norm, it's always our fault. It's their
Always.
fault. And it's not that the problem's not them, when really they need to grow and change and accept this new reality and take it in a healthy way. Good job figuring out how to do
Oh,
that.
I just figured out how to do
We have
this.
to take the banner. There you go. Good job. I'm so proud of you. So there's the thing.
There's the
And it says,
cartoon.
would you do me the honor of taking on even more responsibilities while my life remains largely unchanged? And then the man is proposing to the woman.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, good job, Corinne.
And when I saw that, I don't know if y'all are familiar with the comedian Ali Wong. She has a couple of
I like
I
her
love
stuff.
her.
I
She has a
love her.
couple of specials on Netflix, but one of my favorite jokes of hers is, do you know how much more I would get done if I had a wife?
I know.
Like
I saw
like
that.
my husband, because her husband, I believe they're divorced now, but
Yeah,
he's
she's
an
single now.
attorney.
Yeah.
He's an attorney. She's, was a professional comedian. And so it's like we both have these careers, and yet his expectations of what is supposed to happen in the home hasn't changed.
Yeah.
And
So she could have a wife. She could get more stuff done since she's a very successful comedian.
she sure is. She sure is.
Yeah, I'm really thankful for her because she says it in a funny way, but it
Mhm.
helps push the culture for women to say, maybe I shouldn't work a full-time job and completely take care of the kids when they get home from school and do the laundry and cook.
Mm,
Maybe I should have some help here since I'm also providing financially.
Yep.
It gives us a way to say it when she's come out and said it in a funny way.
Yes.
You
Yeah.
know?
Because then that when she articulates in that way that makes it accessible, then we can say like, oh yeah, actually I relate to that. And maybe the lesbians have it figured out.
I don't know. Being a lesbian's hard, so I think they have their own mental health struggles, because life
Yeah.
is so much harder. Yeah, I wanted to talk about something that I think will be controversial to the feminists listening, and it's something that I'm still working on. We shouldn't yell at men because they have these thoughts. We shouldn't yell at them. We're just going to make them angrier at us. But we do need to talk to them and push it. And so it's a delicate thing of we don't need to yell at them online and call them sexist,
Mm-hmm.
but we could help to say, I just want you to know what it's like for me. And
Yeah.
we could share our own experiences as a woman, and especially the men that we're friends with, we can
Mm-hmm.
talk to them about it. Like, it's been really wonderful being good friends with Tim Peck, who is aware of a lot of sexism, but since he himself is not a woman, he doesn't get all of it. And when I share it with him, he listens and takes it in and then says like things like, "Okay, well, how can I help?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm not used to that." You
Yeah.
know? So there are lots of amazing men out there trying, and
Mm-hmm.
there are lots of amazing men out there trying and messing up. because culturally we've been thought, been taught so many wrong things. It takes a while to
Yep.
get there.
We
It's
have
a
to
process.
undo it.
Yeah, there are men that have written books on toxic masculinity that say, I still don't get it. I have to work on it every single day because the culture is pounding on us to
Mhm.
continue this belief that women serve the family and serve the
Yep.
man, and instead of that we're equal and we should be doing things together. So I just want everybody to realize, when we just yell at men online, I don't think we're helping our case. I
Mhm.
think it just makes them hate us more.
Yeah. And when it comes out into into the real world where women are making selections of a partner, and the number of women who are like, look, I'm straight. I love men. I would love to marry a man. I'm not finding anybody who aligns with my values. And so the choice to stay single is also a place where we can see women thriving and men not thriving. And that's another area where, when we look at what the data tells us and then what the culture tells us, the data tells us single women without children worldwide are statistically the happiest demographic of people, mentally well and satisfied in their life. And yet, anybody who wants to tell you that you don't have kids, they want to tell you that you're miserable, that you're surrounded by 97
And
cats and
why
you're
aren't
going
you
to die
married? Yeah, you're
alone.
gonna die a cat lady. Why aren't you married?
Women will not die alone because women have bonds with other women that they are taught to have from childhood that men are not taught to have.
Right. And that's so sad for men. That's
Mm-hmm.
so sad that they don't have that support. And that's another problem, and why sexism is worse, is because they're bred to believe they shouldn't have close relationships with other men. They shouldn't share their thoughts and feelings. And that's really hurting them now. And this is a real problem. I was listening to Adam Conover's podcast, Factually, and he had
Mm-hmm.
a woman on that wrote a book about why is the birth rate going down
Yeah.
globally in every area except for maybe just like a couple tiny places across the globe. And one of the big issues was what you just said. Women are happier statistically when you study them, those that have jobs and do not get married and have children, than those that are working, having children, and doing way the majority of the household tasks. And so then they're choosing not to get married, and then men are mad at the women for not getting married to them, and so then it just escalates.
And not being able to find that common ground is something that we're probably going to be grappling with for a while. We have to figure out how to have these conversations in a way that actually can be productive,
Yeah.
and hopefully we can start doing that here at Project
I
Next.
think we have been doing that, Corinne. I think you're really badass about talking about this stuff with me. I feel so privileged to get to talk to you. I think we are doing that. I think the Brian Zimmerman show really helps, having a man on that's a retired veteran that's got giant muscles, and he's openly sharing his thoughts and feelings and vulnerabilities with anybody that wants to listen. I think we are doing this on Project Next. I just hope that it is helping, because all I want to do is just help people and grow as a community and unite. So this is probably one of the biggest issues dividing the right and left. At least it seems to be online. Like, you take our vice president, JD Vance, who, attacked cat ladies, like got Taylor Swift mad. That's him being upset at women not wanting to get married. And here I am, a happily married woman with kids, saying that's not the best way to handle that. Maybe we should help our men to understand how to treat a woman equally, because it hasn't been that way in the past. Maybe we should talk about that instead of blaming women that have cats.
It was so funny when that cat lady thing happened because a good friend of mine is married to a very conservative man who loves his cats like you would not believe. And they're not having kids, and that's their, I mean, by choice, and they freaking love their cats. And it was so funny to me to look at at his reaction. And I even made a TikTok about it. And he came up to me one time when we were at work, and he was like, "Oh, I love that TikTok." And he and I are not going to agree on many things, politically, but this idea that, and it's so funny too, because you've got cats, Sarah, I have cats.
I get to.
I do too. To think about cats being inserted into politics, like, could you think of another animal that cares
I'm
any
allowed to have
less?
them, Corinne. I'm allowed to have them because I'm married.
Same, also.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
it's like the cats don't want to be involved in our nonsense. They don't want to be here. Like,
And
leave them alone. They don't care. It just, the cat lady thing was really, really
and
funny.
why do people like JD Vance, and then there are women out there too, think that they can judge a woman for deciding she doesn't want to get married? Why do we
Mhm.
think we can judge their life? I don't care whether a woman gets married or not. I want her to have a happy, successful life. And she can choose to do that in whichever way she wants. And you know what? She can choose to have an unhappy life too if she wants. It's her
That's
freaking
fine.
life. I just don't understand where people come in and think they can judge a woman. And you've done many TikToks on this, which I love tremendously. You're like, oh, it's almost like no matter what I do, I'm wrong. Yeah,
Always.
that's what we want to point out. I'm probably doing many things wrong in my life. You're probably doing many things wrong as a woman, but the
Mhm.
the men, we just say, look, their life is hard, we're going to leave them be, and we need to culturally realize maybe we shouldn't be so hard on women. Maybe we shouldn't judge them.
Maybe we should. And so much of this, when you hear people, because this has become kind of a political tug of war, when you hear people shame women for not getting married, it's because they understand the economic benefit of women's labor. And when you don't have a woman who is providing domestic labor, whether she is working full time or not, that hurts men because it hurts their productivity. And when you look at it as an economic reality, that's what they're talking about. That's what the JD Vances are talking about. And not to, of course, he's not the only one, but look at the
No.
entire manosphere of podcasts. That's what they're talking about. They're
Yes.
losing free labor. They're
Right.
watching free labor go away over time.
And it's making them angry.
The cartoon that we shared, this cartoon, I'll put it back up again, right? This cartoon, the Ali Wong, think about how much more I could get done if I had a wife. We all know how valuable women's labor is. And when they don't have it, when they are afraid of losing it, that's where they have to start culturally blaming women for being
Yeah, it's our
deficient.
fault. It's
Yep.
our fault. Everything's our fault.
But look again, how many parallels are we seeing to post-Civil War? Frederick Douglass famously said when slavery was abolished, he said, okay, what's going to be the slavery now? What's it going to be called now? And we saw slavery immediately reinstated, just under a different name, because the economic structure was based on slavery. There was no other option, because that is how we built our system. The
And you can
economic
see this
system.
Plots and Politics, you guys. She did a
Yes.
whole a month's worth of episodes on this. But basically, Corinne is saying whenever slavery ended, it didn't stop the free labor. They just renamed it other things.
Mm-hmm.
They would arrest Black
Land
people and make them
contracts.
work.
Yes.
They would put them under contracts where they're basically
Sharecropping.
still completely poor no matter what. And then the law was changed and made so that a white person could blame a Black person, and it didn't matter whether the Black person did it or not. They would get in trouble. Black people would start their own neighborhoods and their own communities to try to avoid, looking at a white person wrong and getting thrown in jail or getting killed. And then people destroyed some of the Black communities. So
Yep.
so you just rename it a different way
Mm-hmm.
instead of actually healthily growing and changing, and realize, oh, I could change some unhealthy things that I'm thinking and treat these people better.
And you can see, so when we look at the changes that happened post-Civil War and the introduction of the 13th Amendment, and the 13th Amendment abolished slavery, except as punishment for a crime. And that is kind of the legal loophole that we are still dealing with, because our prisoners are our laborers. and they are still exploited as cheap labor. And so you watch the loopholes try to self-correct to the default. I talk a lot about fitting our foot in that shoe, right? You slip on your kid's shoe or your spouse's shoe to run out to the garage really quick, and it doesn't feel right. Right? Because it's not formed to your foot. We're not willing, as a United States, as a young country, as a country that's a little over 200 years old, we are not willing to undergo the discomfort of growing pains. So we keep slipping back into the economic structure that benefits most people. And the same thing is now that happened with the 13th Amendment is now happening now with the reduction of access to abortion, reduction of access to reproductive health care, because women having children keeps them at home and keeps them providing that domestic labor. It keeps them supporting the economic structure that the United States depends upon. And that all ties together when you look at something like birth control. Oh, that's a women's issue. It's an economic issue. Abortion is not a women's issue. It's an economic issue. And those things, when you start to remove those advances, because here's what's happening, the culture is seeing women are becoming more college educated. Women are starting to make more money. Women are starting to not have children at a much higher rate and not get married at a much higher rate. What does our society do? Shaped on laws? Okay, we'll take away your right to an abortion. We'll make it harder for you to get birth control. We will make cuts to Medicaid, for example, or Title 10 funding that is reducing the access to birth control in the communities that need it most. We keep you at home. You keep providing us with the free labor that we've been dependent upon.
And I just want to take it through. We've lost our healthcare rights. Those of us in many red states, it's a little under half of the states in the country, have lost our women's healthcare since Roe was taken down. Roe v. Wade. I want to talk about some of the findings of what's happening because of that. Because the people that did this, their hope is more women will have more children. But actually, let's take Indiana, for example. Women in Indiana are doubling up on birth control. They were going to have children, but since now it's not as safe to have a child because we've lost our healthcare rights, they're choosing to not have children. So it also causes people to move. Sometimes people that want to start a family move to Illinois, which is the closest state in Indiana where we have access to healthcare. And so what's happened in Indiana and across all of the states that don't have this right is fewer children are being born. So I know that's what they wanted. They wanted more of us to pump out babies. We're scared. I'm worried for my daughter. She's only 6 now, but I've been told it's going to take at least 20 years to get this right back. When she gets her period, I'm going to make sure she has a doctor here in Indiana, and I'm going to get her one in Illinois. But not everybody has the financial means to do that. So I just want people to realize what you're trying to do isn't working. You cannot force women to get married and have a bunch of babies. You cannot do that. You can
No.
try taking away birth control. Women will still get it other ways. You can try, making it so that we can't get an abortion in Indiana. Women will still go to other places, or they will seek an unsafe abortion here. They might hurt themselves. You cannot force women to do things that women do not want to do. You can force some of them. Some of them will die. We've already had women die in Indiana from this, but you're not going to get the outcome that you want. And so the best thing to do is to support women when they get pregnant, support women once they have the child. If they are not married and they do not have a bunch of money, support them in free childcare, and then helping them get education and get a good job so that they can raise their child in not poverty situations. We need to be looking at what you want to do in ways that actually help women and children, instead of this terrible controlling thing that actually hurts women and kills babies.
And when you see women, so many heartbreaking stories. I mean, we had Amber here in Indiana who shared her story of desperately wanting a baby. She and her partner desperately wanting their 3 older sons, very excited to be big brothers to little baby Arlo. And unfortunately, they were faced with a decision where they had to terminate the pregnancy for her safety. And the idea that if you are a woman who already has one child maybe, or really wanted kids and has a history of miscarriages, or is afraid of having a miscarriage, the thought that you could not have access to the healthcare that you would need, that you had access to just 5 years ago, just having a miscarriage from a wanted pregnancy, that's a fear that is forcing women to say, all right, I wanted 2 or 3 kids, but I got one and I got to stop now because I had miscarriages.
And that's
And
what the findings show.
I'm not
Yeah.
willing to risk, because what you're asking women to do is risk their child's mom.
Yeah.
And I think that so much of this is painting women as these heartless people who just don't want babies, and they don't love their kids. 100% not. And that's where I'm really curious to see some of this start to play out in the courts when we look at challenges to these kind of reproductive restrictions, because so much of this is, of course, based on certain people's interpretation of their Christian faith and their religion. But you have a religion like Judaism that says, no, 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 we prioritize the mom. She's the most important thing. If we lose her, she's got 2 other kids that now don't have a mom. That's a religion that prioritizes the woman. And when we look at this as a societal issue, as a way that it hurts all of us, that this shows up quite a bit in data when we look at the gender pay gap. And this is one area: reproductive health care, access to contraception, and equal pay are 2 of the areas that continue to be the most resisted from the people who benefit from women's cheap, free, or reduced labor. And I have read so many fun conservative think tank articles that say that the gender pay gap is a myth because it's all about choices. And women, in their theory, just choose jobs that pay less. And again, this goes back to kind of what we were talking about in the beginning here about combat, about what we value, right? We pay men who are doing more difficult and dangerous jobs. That's a comment that I see a lot. They're out there risking their lives, right? So, but we've set up a system where we're going to value physical labor and physical sacrifice, which again, that should really piss men off, that you're willing to be sacrificed.
It's not even true, because so many men have really hard, like, construction type jobs and they don't get paid great. So it's not even true. I mean,
but women, we choose to just use our brains.
What about nurses? I'm sorry.
No, that's easy woman's labor, Sarah.
I mean, you know how hard it is to be a nurse? Have you talked to somebody that's a nurse? I was a former teacher.
You were a teacher.
Pretty hard job.
Very hard job. But so when we look at choices that are being made, that is how women are being blamed for this gender pay gap.
It's always our fault.
Always our fault. And so because there have actually been some gains in decreasing the gender pay gap, but some of these numbers are really startling. So on average, women are making 85% of what men make. And when you look at that over a year, women are making a median in the US of 55,000. Men are making 66,000. And when you multiply that out over the average lifespan of someone's career, that's a $500,000 difference. So that is men making $500,000 more in their lifetime than women.
Corinne, when I decided to quit my teaching job during the pandemic, my husband had gotten a bonus for his IT job, and his bonus was half my salary after teaching with a master's for 18 years. And I just felt, because I was like, I can't quit. We need my money. We need the money I'm making as a teacher. And then my husband stayed up late at night and then got this bonus and calculated. And he's like, no, we'll be fine. Look. And I was just like, we don't pay teachers enough. I'm working my butt off as a teacher.
Well, Sarah, it's your own damn fault for being born a woman. Fault. I don't know what you're trying to do here. You got to just take responsibility for the fact that you're a woman and you're worth less than the men. Like it is so silly when you really look at the kind of what we are valuing. Goodness gracious, it's no wonder why, especially
it's not that I'm not thankful my husband makes good money.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Like, where's the teacher money?
No, we can't have that. And teaching is such an interesting profession because it was traditionally it was seen as kind of like, oh, we'll just give the women folks something to do while the
And
men's
they
out
can
there
do it.
making the real work.
And then when they get married and get pregnant, they stop it.
They stop
Because
it.
my mom was one of the first pregnant teachers at her Catholic school that she taught in, and they would have fired her, but they couldn't find another person to take her job. So they allowed her to be pregnant and keep teaching after she had that baby. And my mom is, I think, 72. So this isn't that
Scandal.
long ago. She was a real trendsetter. She was really judged and looked down upon for teaching with a pregnant belly.
Oh yeah.
And my dad was in the Louisville Orchestra and didn't make as much money, or they made about the same with him being in the Louisville Orchestra and teaching and having a church job and all these other gigs. And they needed her income. My mom needed that income. So this is not that long ago.
It's not that long ago. And go, if you ever want to do a fun deep dive, go look at different TV shows over the decades and how they have handled a pregnant woman, because it was a scandal to see a pregnant woman on television. Lucy
I Love
was,
Lucy was the
yes,
first
was
one
the
that
first,
she brought out the baby. It was like a
and
big deal.
she showed her belly too.
I
Like
think it was the first time they even said the word pregnant. Like it was a
pregnant.
big deal that they
That
said
was a
that
bad
word.
word. They would say she's with child, right? We can't say pregnant. So it is really, really funny. And I'm glad that you mentioned Catholic school, that your mom was a teacher at a Catholic school and could have been fired. So you look at any kind of discrimination protections, and we get into this a lot when we talk about the school voucher program in Indiana and what religious schools are
Yeah, there's no
exempt from
unions
doing it.
in Catholic schools in
No.
Indiana. There's
And
no
they don't,
unions.
and they are not protected with the same protections as workers in public institutions. So a religious institution is able to discriminate against somebody based on their religion. And it comes up for us all the time up here in Northern Indiana, because we have the University of Notre Dame, which is a prominent Catholic institution. And they regularly have court battles because their employees will not have access to birth control on their health insurance, because it
I
is
didn't know
against their
that.
values. And so
Wow.
it's always a culture conflict that you have this financial juggernaut. I mean, the Catholic Church and the university are so unbelievably wealthy, and they hold their values over their women staff members in this way. And it's a religious principle. It's right. This university cannot be compelled to violate its religious principles and provide their staff birth control. They can't be forced to do that. Now the women can go on an exchange and get it somewhere else, but it's kind of these very archaic
And we
rules.
know Catholic women use birth control. They're not pumping out 9, 10, 11, 12 kids.
Can we
Some of
stop
them
pretending
do.
that they don't?
Some of them do, but the majority of people, it's based on your economic status, how much money you make. The majority of people that make middle class income or higher are using birth control.
Yep.
And then lots of other people are too. But it's like, it's really stupid to pretend that these
Yes,
Catholic
that
women
they're
are using
not.
birth control.
It's so
Whenever I
silly.
taught fifth grade sex ed, I wasn't allowed to talk about birth control, which I
Mhm.
wasn't planning on it. They're fifth graders, but I think eighth graders should know about it. And we weren't allowed to talk about it.
No, can't even. No,
I could
no,
get
no, no.
fired from my job.
Oh my God. So when we look, so I pulled up some stats on the gender pay gap, because when
Okay, let's
people
hear it.
talk
Sorry.
about feminine, no, it's fine. This is the fun part of our show, as we go on tangents. Because when people talk about, this is all about choices, women just make different choices. They choose to be poor. Like, no, they don't. And when you break this out away from women as the whole, and look at individual women and individual demographics, it's pretty startling. So if a white man is 100% of an income, Latino women make 55% of what
Wow.
he makes. Still
Wow.
today, 55%.
Women are 80 something.
Women as a whole are 85.
85. And
Latino women are
wow.
55%. Black women are 66%. White women are 80%. And Asian American women are actually 94% of what a white man makes. But to look at Latino women, 58%, and Black women at 66%, that's startling. And that's one of the reasons why you have to look at feminism and feminist causes as including those marginalized voices, because so many of the gains that have been realized by white women. And when people want to talk against especially white women, when I hear them speak against feminism, it is generally just a true lack of understanding of the advances that they are benefiting from. The only
Right.
reason you're able to go say that on a podcast, honey, is because of feminism. That's why you have a job. That's why you have a bank account. That's why you can
Yeah.
own a home or rent property. And so, some of this, anytime I have these conversations with people about wages, I always encourage people to talk about it. Talk about what you make.
Yes.
And
Because remember there've been like things with actors. I
uh-huh.
know it's with The Crown.
Yes. And
The
they're like,
Crown
they
story came out
talked.
with the first season of The Crown. They didn't realize, the actors didn't realize that the one playing Elizabeth, the queen, was making less than the one playing Philip, the king, who didn't have the power. He married into it. And they didn't know because they didn't talk about how much money they got. And they could have cleared it up, and she could have said, I should be
Easily.
paid at least the same as the person that's not the star of the show.
Because she had way more screen time.
She had way more screen
Yeah.
time, and she's one of the reasons the show was so popular. She was
Mhm.
amazing. I can't remember her
Claire
name right now.
Foy. I love
Good
her.
job.
Claire
Good
Foy.
job. I love
Yeah.
her too. Yeah, and so that's an example of, and it's not like we should have a pity party for her. She's doing fine,
Yeah.
but she should have gotten paid the same or more as the male co-star that wasn't
Mhm.
as big in the show and didn't do as much and didn't have as many parts to learn.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I kind of hear this. I want to tell you this because I heard that this week, this argument that white women, me, I'm so freaking blessed. I have so many more rights than many women across the globe. There are
Mhm.
women in the Middle East that do not get to vote, they can't drive. Some of them, like in Pakistan, they can't even go to school. And that argument is saying I should shut up and be happy with the rights I have. And I'm like, no, we
Mm-mm.
need to fight for the women in Pakistan that those girls can't go to school right now. And I mean, Malala's doing that, when
Mhm.
she can't live in Pakistan, in her home country, because she would be murdered by the government. Um, it's like,
Just shut up
no,
and be
I'm not
happy,
going to shut up.
right?
Yes, I am really blessed in my life. I am very lucky. But shouldn't I fight for all women to,
Mhm.
shouldn't I use my voice and my status as a white woman who is lucky to say my daughter deserves health care? Every woman on the planet deserves health care. We shouldn't be forcing women to not go to school and to get pregnant and to get married. So I just want to call that out because I've heard that this week and it was
Yep.
upsetting to me. I'm like, yeah, I realize I'm really blessed. I get it. Women have been mistreated since women were born. I get it. That doesn't mean we don't fight for better always.
But look at what the goal is of white women complacency. The goal is to get us to shut up and accept it. And look where that got us. It got Roe overturned. And so the goal of white women complacency is to keep us quiet because we have benefited from so many of these advances. Once we get complacent and quiet because we take those advances for granted, they get taken away from us. And that's kind of the narrative. That's the drumbeat of these are rights that can be lost. And because we've been convinced for so long that
we can't lose them.
Oh, that they're permanent. But this same argument, I mean, there are some amazing editorials from the early 1900s after the founding of the NAACP of reading so many of these white editors from newspapers around the country. Why can't these Black people just be happy? They're not slaves anymore. Why can't
Oh,
they just be grateful with what they have? And so that narrative from the person in power always saying, why can't you just be happy? Like, we're not imprisoning you anymore. We're not, just be happy with what you have.
just be happy
So,
with the little we gave you.
yes,
Take
because
it
you should
and
be
be
grateful
thankful.
because you're lesser than anyway. And how do you
Yeah.
not realize that you're lesser than?
Mhm.
And so that's a tool to get us to be sedentary, to get us to take it for granted, and then we lose the rights. And so the economic gains that have been made by women are at risk of being lost because of the restrictions in reproductive health care.
And I think it's going to get better before it gets worse in America. Honestly, I think
Do you
we're
mean
going
worse
to.
before better or
Did I
better
say it
before?
wrong? It's going to
Yeah.
get worse before it
Worse.
gets better.
Yes.
Sorry.
Oh yeah.
And
It's always going to get worse. Yep.
And it's going to get worse before it gets better, but we're going to keep uniting, and we're going to get women, whether they're political or not, joining us. We can do that with technology. We can fight this, but I do think things are going to get worse. Things are bad in Indiana now. I think they're going to get worse with our extreme government. And I don't want people to lose hope. I'm not
Hmm.
giving up. You're not giving up, Corinne. You're just
No.
growing and getting more badass with your power and how great you are at your messaging and your videos. I'm not stopping. I'm going to continue to try to grow Project Next and get the word out, and interview as many people as possible and learn from them and grow. And so we're gonna do this. We're
Yeah.
gonna get these rights back. Women's healthcare in Indiana is gonna come back. When? I don't know. 2
No.
years? I don't think so. 4 years? I
No.
don't think so.
I don't
I
think
think
so
it's gonna
either.
take a while, but that doesn't mean I give up and I lose hope and I become complacent, because that's how we lose more rights.
Yeah. And when you think of it, and you kind of and I never want anybody to think that I'm comparing any struggles here, right? I'm not
Right.
doing comparisons of what
Right.
Black Americans have experienced and white women have experienced.
Right.
There's not a comparison
No.
there. But what you can compare is the comfy shoe, the economic comfort that is experienced largely by white men because of the free or reduced labor provided by people of color, whether that is migrants on our farm, that's women in the kitchen. That labor is so critical to our economic system that the default is always going to be there. And that's what you can look at when you see some of these advances trying to be taken away. And there's a panic that sets in. There's a panic that sets in from the status quo when they see how educated women are becoming, when they see women asserting independence, not needing to be forced to get married. There was another stat I came across this week that was really upsetting to me. But when no fault divorce was, because if y'all don't remember, and not that I remember, you and I weren't alive, but no fault divorce was a revolutionary achievement for women, because before that you had to prove a reason and you actually had to go to court and argue your case, and a
So a lot of
judge
times
could
you were
deny
told
you.
no, and
Yes.
then your husband is going to get even more angry at you because you
Mhm.
wanted to leave him, and then you're
Yes.
stuck.
You're stuck. So
Yes.
no fault divorce, when that became nationwide in the 1970s, suicide rate for women dropped 20%.
Wow.
20%. Think of how many women took their lives because they couldn't be divorced. They couldn't get divorced. And so those are the kind of things that we are at risk of losing. One of our Indiana state legislatures introduced a bill to remove no fault divorce in the state of Indiana and make women prove
And
their
and
divorce.
there's a few states that have that now.
Mhm.
They put it back on. I think they did things like, if you are pregnant, you cannot get divorced.
It's with children. It's
Yeah.
it's this whole idea
So
that women getting divorced
if
are
you're in
ruining children.
if you're in an abusive relationship and that person helped get you pregnant, you can't get out of it. You have to wait until you have the baby. Well, then
Mhm.
it's very hard to divorce. And then that man is going to have connections. Maybe it's an abusive person that's beating the crap out of this woman and she's pregnant. She can't get divorced now. And then if she tries to get divorced after having that child, that man is going to have a lot of access to their child and can still control her that way. And so I know situations where that's happened. I have loved ones,
Yeah.
friends that have had this happen to them. So it's not like it doesn't happen.
It totally happens all the time. And this idea that, which is where the Indiana bill was coming from, and even though it did not move forward in this
Thank
legislative
God.
session, don't worry, y'all. It'll definitely be back. They will introduce it again. And this idea that divorce harms children to such an extent that therefore you should stop letting people get divorced is really silly, because you're asking people to stay in a terrible marriage, for their kids, which is horrible for children to see that. And the biggest thing that harms children after divorce is their mother being in poverty, because there's no structure for her to be financially solvent.
Maybe
So
we support the women. I don't
what?
know.
No, but again, the comfy shoe. The comfy shoe is they're dependent and they're stuck
Yeah.
because we need their labor. We need them cleaning our house and raising our kids.
Yeah.
And so until we start to recognize that that is why we make moral arguments when they're actually economic arguments, when this is disguised as family values, when this is disguised as best for the children, it's not. It's an economic issue that they're trying to make a moral issue because they think that it makes them sound more righteous. And that they're absolutely not making a moral argument. They want the free labor.
The thing that always, I was divorced and I wanted the divorce and I got out, and it was very difficult in Indiana to get out of my marriage without the extra restrictions. I had to get my ex-husband to agree to sign the papers, and I had to work on that. It was no lawyer was going in and convincing him. I had to convince him. And I did, and we're friends and we raised our kid together. Um, the case they make about marriage and keeping kids in watching a bad marriage, kids are going to be in a relationship similar to what they've seen growing up. So this helps me always encourage my husband and I to be as healthy as possible, because our kids are watching. Our three children are watching the way we interact, the way we fight, the way we handle disagreements. And I don't want my daughter thinking these sexist things that I grew up thinking, that that the man should be in charge, the man should be in charge of the money, then we just back off and let them yell at us. And it's like, no, I do not want my daughter being treated that way by another man. I'm going to make sure to clean up all the stuff in my head, all the negative culture things, so that they have an equal relationship if she chooses to get married, which is her choice. I've lost your sound.
Oh no, because I muted myself. No, but yeah, that if she chooses to, if that's the life she chooses,
yes,
and
she chooses it.
Yep.
Yeah,
And
a partner. I should say partner, because
yeah,
she can love whoever she freaking wants to love.
yes.
Yeah.
And the options that should be there, it shouldn't. It's not. Feminism has never been about anti-domestic labor. Feminism has never been about anti-stay-at-home moms. It's always about choices and giving women empowerment and the ability to not be trapped.
Yes.
And that is something that should unite women regardless of politics and
And right
regardless of
now,
background.
we have a political party that is honestly trying to trap women. They're trying to force us to have children. They're trying to force us so we can't get out of a marriage. It is scary, and we are going to have to keep raising alarms and working together across the spectrum. I believe most women do not want to be controlled, do not want to be trapped. So we need to quit thinking it as a Christian issue, as a family values. No, this is
Yeah.
about trapping women, and we need to do everything we can to work together on all political spectrums so that we stop this.
Yep.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I think that's really good. Before we leave, I want to say tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, I'm going to do a really hard and I think beautiful interview with our good friend Scott Aaron Rogers, who he is part of Project Next. Scott Aaron Rogers lost his 19-year-old son a little over a year ago. He died. And I met Scott in one of the beautiful ways he is grieving, by putting on his own podcast, by trying to make Indiana better. That's how I met him. And it was into becoming friends with him that I learned he had lost his son. And he is struggling right now with grief. And most people in American society do not know how to talk to someone that lost a child. And we are going to talk about his grief, what happened. And I'm really hoping it helps those of us that have lost a loved one, and those of us that love someone that have lost a loved one. How do we help ourselves and help them? And I know I'm gonna shed some tears, and I know Scott is, and I'm so thankful he's going to do this live on air for Project Next, because he needs help. And we know so many other people that have lost a loved one, we've got to do better in our culture instead of just ignoring it and not talking about it. So that's tomorrow at 9, and you can catch it anytime after on the Project Next stuff. And another thing is please subscribe to our YouTube.
Yeah,
That's the
go to
other thing.
YouTube, subscribe to Project Next.
Yes.
Also find all of our episodes wherever you listen to podcasts too, and you can rate and review us there, which actually helps a lot. Helps people find us.
And Corinne's Plots and Politics, her show is freaking fantastic, girl. I'm so proud of you. You can now see it as a playlist. You can now click on playlists and see all of the episodes and just listen to them whenever you want or watch them. And you can also listen to our show as a podcast too. You don't have to watch us too. You can just
Yeah,
turn it
just
on, whatever
listen.
you're watching, and put headphones in and go about your day.
Yeah.
But yeah, so thanks for supporting us, and thanks for talking about feminism with me. You're my favorite feminist, I have to say.
Thank
You're my
you.
favorite that I'm friends with. My other one that I love so much is Destiny Wells.
Yes,
Yeah.
and she's a good one, and definitely somebody that, is accused of drama or
And it's
accused of
not
ruffling
her.
feathers, and
It's
it's
the
not
people
her. No.
doing stuff to her, and they're blaming her. And whenever we were talking about that, I just mainly thought about her because she's gone through it recently.
Mhm.
Yeah. So thanks for doing this show. You're incredible.
You are too. This was fun.
This was
And
fun.
we
And
will be back. Yeah, we'll see.
oh,
Oh yeah.
I want to plug one more thing.
Yeah,
You have an Instagram. It's
I
Corinne
do.
Straight. One word. Corinne
Yes.
Straight.
It's just my name. Yeah,
Yeah, it's her
Corinne
name.
Straight, yeah.
You can follow her for free on Instagram. You can pay 99 cents a month to subscribe to Corinne Straight's uh, Instagram channel,
Yep.
and you get extra behind the scenes content. You can ask her your own personal questions and she will respond to you. It's only 99 cents, which I feel like is a really good
It
deal.
is a good deal, and I know
So
everybody has, like, a ton of subscriptions, which kinda sucks, and it's
but a
annoying.
dollar a month,
A
you can
dollar a month.
probably afford. If you love Corinne like I love Corinne, that's a good deal. So on Instagram, you can do that. I think that's just an easy thing to do to help Corinne, because we're not getting paid for doing Project Next. We hope eventually to.
It's
But
our passion project.
it's our passion project and we'd like to make money with it
Yeah.
eventually. So yeah.
And what
So
I'm finding, which I think is kind of a good thing, but it's also kind of a frustrating thing, I know for some people, is I'm not able to respond to the questions that I get from people in the way that I
you're
used
too
to.
popular. You're
There's
too
too many
popular.
messages,
Yeah.
and so if somebody does want to kind of just have a one-on-one chat with me, if you subscribe, then I see your messages, and I'm happy to. And so many people have really good questions, and it's genuine curiosity about our electoral system or a policy issue, and those are the kind of questions that I love to answer. I just need to be able to
On Tik
prioritize
on
them.
TikTok, Corinne cannot do this anymore. She's up to almost 80,000 followers on
Mm.
TikTok, so she cannot talk to you, even though she'd love to.
I would, and I
And
used to
then on
respond to
Instagram, you're
everybody.
around 30,000 now, I think, or
Hmm.
almost at
I'm at
30,000.
30, yeah, a
So
little over
if you
30.
want to talk to her now, all you have to do is pay a dollar a month, which I think is a pretty good deal. I feel really privileged because I just call you on the phone and you
Yes.
answer. And I'm like, I'm having this really hard problem. And you give me the
That's
best freaking
because
advice.
we're friends. That's what we
I
get to do,
love
right?
being friends with you.
Yeah.
I don't know how I got so lucky. It's the best thing about the terrible Indiana government is we
That
get to
we
be
found each
friends.
other.
I'm so
Well,
happy we're
I
friends.
have to give you credit because I mean, back in November when I met you, I think I was only around like 20,000 followers on TikTok, and you and I were talking about DMs because you DM'd me, and
Yeah.
and you were just like, I can't believe you answered, and I'm like, of course I answered. I answer everybody, and you were like, you're not going to be able to do that forever, and I'm like, what are you talking about? I'll always answer people. You're like, no, you're going to get too big that you won't be able to answer, and when I look at the DMs on TikTok, it's close to 2,000 and I can't. And those are
No, you don't have enough time in the day. It's
there's
not that you
no
don't want to,
oh, I would love to. I would love to be able to.
but also you could use some
But
money.
you were right. Yeah.
Yeah, I called it.
Yeah, you did.
This is gonna happen
Congratulations.
more. This is gonna
Yeah.
happen more.
Yeah.
So she's gonna keep growing because she is incredible, everybody. So I'm just really proud of you. And yes, I called it.
You
Not
did.
shocked that I was right there.
You were right on that one. You're like, you're not gonna be able to do that for. I'm like, what are you talking about? I'll always answer people. No, I will not always answer people. No, can't do it.
But you do amazing TikToks about incredible things. So if people want to go through and your Instagram, your Facebook, and your TikTok and find, you probably cover a lot of their questions
I
already.
do. I do. And because I do a lot, because a lot of us wonder the same things. It's not, there's a lot of curiosity and we all share very similar curiosities.
And also, Corinne just did a really fantastic interview with Karen Talion, who's our new Indiana Democratic State Chair. And she asked her hard questions. And I want to thank Karen for coming on. I think she was really honest and she helped my fears because I had a fear about charter schools. She helped know the Democratic Party in Indiana is fighting. They are fighting hard for public
Mhm.
education. So I was really glad to hear about that. And she's going to hopefully interview Karen some more and
Yeah.
other people too. So that you can just look, that was on Tuesday that you did that
Mhm.
episode.
Yep.
It's really good. And those of you that are in Indiana that have concerns about the Indiana State Democratic Party, same, I do too. That episode might help you, and it also might give you some fuel to your fire to keep working. Because
Yeah.
Indiana, we got some work to
We got
do.
some work to do. It's going to
Yeah,
take
yeah,
us a
yeah.
long time. Yep.
Okay, sorry,
Thanks,
I'll stop blabbing
everybody.
now. Thanks,
No,
everybody.
thanks,
Have a
everyone.
fantastic weekend, and tomorrow's Friday, and the rest of your weekend. Good luck with the storms.
Yes. Be safe, everyone. Be safe.
Bye. Love
Bye.
you guys.